The night my grandmother passed, the house felt hollow in a way I cannot explain. Not quiet. Hollow. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. She was the only reason our family still felt like a family, the only one who believed memories mattered more than money. Before the funeral, she pressed her old ring into my palm. It was heavy, warm from her skin, scratched from decades of work. She told me to keep it safe. That one sentence carried more weight than I understood at the time. My brother noticed the ring immediately. He always did. He noticed anything that could be turned into cash. While I was grieving, he was calculating. While I was remembering stories, he was scanning rooms. He had not changed. He had only learned how to hide it better. A week later, I left town for work. Just 3 days. That was all it took. When I came back, the ring was gone. At first, I thought I had misplaced it. Panic crawled through me as I searched drawers, bags, coats. My brother sat at the kitchen table, scrolling on his phone, calm as ever. When I asked him if he had seen it, he barely looked up. He said it was old jewelry and probably worth selling. He said bills do not wait for emotions. He said grandmother would understand. My chest tightened, not from loss, but from betrayal. He admitted it without shame. He had already sold the ring. Fast cash. No receipt. No regrets. He acted like he had done us a favor. What he did not know was what that ring really was. My grandmother was careful in ways no one noticed. She trusted quietly. She planned silently. And she never put anything important where greedy hands would look twice. That ring was not just a ring. I said nothing. I let him believe he had won. I let him think I was powerless, hurt, defeated. I even thanked him for being honest. Inside, something shifted. Because the land our family stood on, the land he believed he would inherit one day, was never his. And the proof of that was already gone from his hands. I did not confront him again. That would have been useless. People like my brother mistake silence for weakness, and I needed him comfortable. I needed him careless. So I swallowed the anger and let the house settle back into its routine, even though nothing felt the same anymore. That night, I barely slept. My grandmother's words kept circling in my mind. Keep it safe. At the time, I thought she meant sentimentally. Now I understood she meant legally. She had always known how this family worked. Years earlier, she had taken me aside during a summer storm, her voice low but steady. She spoke about the land beneath our feet, the acres that had been in her name since before I was born. She warned me that inheritance brings out the worst in people. She said trust must be earned, not assumed. I remembered every detail now. The ring was her safeguard. Not flashy enough to draw attention. Not valuable enough to raise suspicion. Hidden in plain sight. Inside it, sealed beneath the stone, was proof of ownership. A micro-engraved reference number tied to the land deed. Registered in a private legal archive, she controlled. My brother had sold it without knowing he had handed away the key to everything. The next morning, he bragged about the money. He talked about paying off credit cards, upgrading his car, finally breathing again. He even joked that Grandma's ring had done more for him dead than alive. I listened quietly. What he did not know was that the sale triggered alerts. My grandmother had set safeguards. When the ring changed ownership, the archive flagged it. I received the email before he finished his coffee. The land was frozen. No transfers. No loans. No claims. And his name was nowhere on it. I contacted the attorney she trusted, the one she had introduced as an old friend. He already knew why I was calling. He said it was time to let the process unfold. That was when I realized revenge would not be loud. It would be patient. Because my brother was already planning his future on land he no longer had access to. And soon, he would find out just how expensive his shortcut really was. The days that followed felt strangely calm. Too calm. My brother moved through the house with a new confidence, spending freely, talking loudly about plans he believed were finally within reach. He spoke about renovating the property, about selling portions of land, about using our grandmother's legacy as leverage for bigger deals. Every word cut deeper. I let him talk. Silence became my shield. The more comfortable he felt, the further he stepped into his own trap. He assumed I was still grieving, still distracted, still powerless. He had always underestimated me. That mistake was about to cost him everything. I spent my evenings going through old documents my grandmother had kept hidden away. Faded maps. Handwritten notes. Legal correspondence spanning decades. She had documented everything. Every boundary line. Every tax payment. Every legal update. She had prepared for this long before her final days. The land was not just valuable. It was strategic. Developers had been circling for years, waiting for a weak link in the family. My brother thought he could be that link. Instead, he had exposed himself. One afternoon, a man in a tailored suit came to the house asking for my brother. He introduced himself as a representative of a real estate investment firm. My brother's eyes lit up instantly. He thought opportunity had finally arrived. I watched from the hallway as their conversation shifted from excitement to confusion. The investor wanted documentation, proof of authority, signatures. My brother promised to provide everything within days. He assured them the land was as good as his. The man nodded politely and left his card. That night, my brother stormed into my room, frustrated and annoyed. He demanded to know where the paperwork was. He asked why grandmother had made things so complicated. He accused me of hiding things from him. I stayed calm. I told him grandmother believed in responsibility. That ownership came with conditions. That not everyone was meant to inherit power. He laughed it off. What he did not know was that the investor was already aware. The freeze on the land had raised red flags. Background checks were underway. The questions were starting. And my brother had no idea how quickly confidence turns into panic when the truth begins to surface. The ring was gone. The land was locked. And the countdown had begun. The tension in the house grew sharper with each passing day. My brother stopped sleeping well. I could see it in the way he paced the hall at night, checking his phone, rereading emails that never came. Confidence had turned into irritation, irritation into quiet fear. Developers kept calling. At first, he ignored them, pretending he was busy. Then he started answering every call, desperate to sound in control. I overheard fragments of conversations filled with promises and vague assurances. He claimed delays were normal. He said legal formalities always take time. But time was no longer on his side. One afternoon, a certified letter arrived addressed to him. He tore it open in the kitchen, his hands shaking. I watched his face strain of color as he read. The land registry had issued a notice. No transactions could proceed without full verification of ownership. Any misrepresentation would carry legal consequences. For the first time, he looked at me differently. Not with arrogance. With suspicion. He asked if I knew anything about it. His voice was controlled, but his eyes betrayed him. I told him grandmother had always been thorough. That nothing about her estate was simple. I reminded him she trusted process more than people. That answer unsettled him more than anger would have. That night, he searched the house. I could hear drawers opening, cabinets slamming, boxes dragged across the floor. He was hunting for something he could not name. Something he should have protected instead of sold. Panic has a sound. It is not loud. It is frantic and uneven. It echoed through the walls as he realized the ring had been more than metal. The next morning, he left early and did not come back until late. When he did, his shoulders were slumped, his confidence gone. He had visited pawnshops, jewelers, auction houses. The ring had already changed hands. No paper trail. No way back. I sat across from him at dinner and watched him eat nothing. He finally asked what grandmother had really given me. I met his gaze and said nothing. Because the more he guessed, the more power slipped through his fingers. And deep down, he already knew. The land he thought he owned was never his. And the truth was getting closer. Fear changes people faster than greed ever does. My brother stopped pretending everything was fine. He began watching me closely, tracking my movements, listening when I spoke on the phone. The house no longer felt shared. It felt monitored. I stayed calm. That calm unnerved him more than confrontation would have. He expected anger, tears, accusations. What he got instead was distance. Silence that gave nothing away. Behind the scenes, things were moving quickly. The attorney called to update me. The buyer who purchased the ring had contacted the archive after noticing the engraving inside the band. Curiosity had turned into concern. The moment they requested verification, the legal chain activated. Ownership records were being pulled. My grandmother's contingency plan was unfolding exactly as she designed it. Meanwhile, my brother was unraveling. He tried securing a loan using the land as collateral. The bank denied it. He attempted to negotiate with developers anyway, promising access he did not have. One firm threatened legal action for misrepresentation. Another quietly walked away. Each failure tightened the pressure. One evening, he confronted me in the living room. Not aggressive. Desperate. He asked if I would help him fix this. He admitted he may have rushed things. He said family should stand together. I asked him a simple question. Why did you not ask me before selling the ring? He had no answer. That silence told me everything I needed to know. He had never seen me as equal. Never as someone whose consent mattered. Only as someone who would clean up after his mistakes. The next day, the attorney filed the formal claim. My name was listed as the sole beneficiary of the land. No shared ownership. No conditions. No loopholes. When my brother received the notification, he did not speak for hours. He sat at the kitchen table staring at the letter, reading it again and again, hoping the words would change. They did not. Because while he sold what he thought was a piece of jewelry, I inherited something far greater. Patience. And now, the final reckoning was no longer a matter of if. It was a matter of when. The shift was immediate. My brother stopped making plans and started making excuses. He told relatives there were delays. He blamed lawyers, banks, paperwork, anyone but himself. The family listened, but I could tell doubt was spreading. People sense collapse before it becomes visible. I stayed out of it publicly. Privately, I prepared. The land was valuable, but what mattered more was what sat beneath it. My grandmother had always said the soil told stories. She was right. Geological surveys completed years earlier revealed untapped resources. Leasing rights alone could secure generational wealth. She had kept that knowledge locked away for a reason. And now, it was mine. Developers returned, not to my brother, but to me. Quiet meetings replaced loud promises. Offers came in numbers that made even seasoned investors pause. I listened. I negotiated. I waited. My brother noticed the change in how people treated me. Conversations stopped when he entered a room. Calls went unanswered. Invitations dried up. Authority had shifted without announcement. One night, he confronted me again, this time without anger. Just exhaustion. He asked how long I had known. I told him long enough to understand who could be trusted. That answer broke something in him. He admitted he never thought the ring meant anything. That he assumed grandmother favored no one. That he believed everything would eventually fall into his hands, because it always had. Entitlement has a way of blinding people to reality. The final notice arrived at the end of the week. A court date to formalize ownership and resolve disputes. My brother had filed an objection, claiming misunderstanding and family rights. It was weak. Emotion is not evidence. In the days leading up to the hearing, he spiraled. He sold his car. He cut expenses. He tried to undo decisions already set in stone. I watched quietly, because the hearing was not about punishment. It was about clarity. And once the truth was placed on record, there would be no version of this story where he walked away unchanged. The land remembered who it belonged to. And soon, everyone else would too. The courthouse felt colder than the air outside. Not physically, but emotionally. Every step echoed, every whisper carried weight. My brother arrived late, eyes hollow, suit wrinkled like he had slept in it. Confidence was gone. What remained was fear wrapped in denial. Family members filled the benches. Some avoided my eyes. Others watched closely, finally realizing the story was not what they had been told. For years, my brother had spoken for all of us. Today, he had no voice strong enough to carry him. The documents were presented methodically. Dates. Registrations. Sealed records. The archive my grandmother trusted spoke louder than any argument. The judge listened carefully, flipping pages, asking precise questions. Each answer tightened the knot around my brother's future. He tried one last angle. He claimed intent, claimed family understanding, claimed emotional ownership. None of it mattered. Facts do not bend for feelings. When the ring was mentioned, I saw his face change completely. That was the moment he understood the full scope of his mistake. Selling the ring had not just lost him an object. It had activated a chain he could never stop. The buyer's statement was read next. Discovery of the engraving. Verification request. Automatic legal trigger. My grandmother's foresight unfolded in perfect order. People in the room began to murmur. This was not revenge driven by anger. This was protection designed years in advance. A test of character my brother had failed the moment he chose money over trust. The judge announced a recess. My brother turned toward me, finally breaking. He asked why I never stopped him. Why I let him do it. His voice cracked under the weight of realization. I told him the truth. He stopped himself. No one forced his hand. No one pushed him. He chose speed over respect. He chose greed over family. And choices have consequences. When the judge returned, the room went silent. The decision was ready. And everything my brother believed he owned was about to disappear. The ruling was clear and final. Ownership of the land was confirmed in my name alone. No shared claims. No appeals with merit. The courtroom stayed silent as the words settled into the record, permanent and unchangeable. My brother did not react at first. He simply sat there, staring forward, as if waiting for someone to correct a mistake that was never going to be corrected. When reality finally reached him, his shoulders collapsed inward. Everything he had assumed had vanished in a single moment. Outside the courthouse, family members gathered in small clusters. Some apologized quietly. Others avoided conversation altogether. The story they had been told for years no longer held up. Truth has a way of rearranging loyalties. I did not celebrate. I drove straight to the land. Standing there alone, I felt my grandmother more strongly than I had since her passing. She had not built this plan out of bitterness. She had built it out of wisdom. She knew exactly who would protect what she loved and who would exploit it. I honored her the only way that mattered. I placed the land into a trust. Protected. Untouchable by greed. I invested in its future, not to strip it, but to preserve it. Farming leases were restored. Local workers were hired. The soil she cherished was respected. As for my brother, he moved out quietly. No confrontation. No forgiveness demanded. Some lessons are learned only through loss. I wished him clarity, not comfort. Months later, the ring resurfaced through legal channels and was returned to me. I did not wear it. I placed it where it belonged, not as decoration, but as a reminder. Power does not come from taking. It comes from knowing when to stay silent and when to stand firm. My grandmother trusted me for a reason. And now, so did the land.